Hi, and welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, speaker, and general explorer when it comes to customer and employee experience. I'm really interested in figuring out what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees. So with that in mind, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, authors and academics to uncover some clues about what it takes to build such an organization. Now, some of you may know the podcast as the Rare Business Podcast, but I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast recently. This is for a number of reasons. First one was to mirror the title of my book, Punk CX, which was published in June 2019. Two, because I'm a fan of punk music. And three, it's just more fun, right? Anyway, if this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then hello and welcome. And please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 300 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then welcome back and thank you. Anyway, that's enough for me right now. Let's get into the interview. Now, before we get into the interview, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Pierce Buckley and the team over at Babel Force for sponsoring the podcast this month. Pierce and his team of telecoms veterans have created a powerful cloud communication solution focused on no-code integration and automation. Their goal is to break down every barrier to great customer experience by putting intuitive tools in the hands of people who live and breathe customer experience. Now, coming up soon, Pierce and Jonathan Bayer of Vonage are running a webinar on the 28th of October at 11 a.m. Central European Time, and they will be discussing exactly how businesses are getting maximum benefit from WhatsApp, which is one of the fastest growing channels for customer service right now. So check out the link in the podcast show notes and sign up. You don't want to miss out, as you'll get a chance to see a demo of the Babel Force platform in action. Now, shall we get back to the interview? So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Fortuné Alexander, who is a Senior Director, Product Marketing for Customer Service and Sales Automation at Pega Systems. Hi, Fortuné. How are you doing?
Hey, Adrian. I'm great. Thrilled to be here this morning or afternoon.
Excellent. So, Fortuné, for the benefit of our listeners and people that will read the highlights, can you give us a bit of a thumbnail sketch on your background and where you've come from and the work that you do?
Absolutely. As you can hear from my accent, I'm American, and I've worked in the tech industry pretty much the entirety of my career. However, I've had the good fortune to have lived and worked overseas. Spent 10 years in Europe, 5 in the UK, a bit in Norway, and in France as well. So worked for some diverse companies that were both on the forefront and some companies that were a little further behind, but we won't name names. But some of the places that I did work were Dell, Dixon's Carphone in the UK, Sony Ericsson in London, and right now I'm with Pega Systems, as you said. And I am the leader for our product marketing team for customer service and sales automation applications.
Awesome. Now, the reason why we want to talk, we queued up this conversation today is because traditionally the first week in October every year is Customer Service Week, #NCSW, I think that's right, where we recognize and celebrate excellent customer service. Now, in the US, the theme this year, according to PACE, which is a professional association for customer engagement, is Celebrate the Heart of Service, where HEART stands for helping others, exceeding the expectations, achieving goals, responding with care, and thriving through teamwork, which is brilliant. I love it. So celebrate the heart of service. But here in the UK, the Institute of Customer Service is focusing on different themes each day of this week, that being change the world of work, service with respect, essential customer service skills and capabilities, effective strategy and focused leadership, and give your customer service heroes the recognition they deserve. So that's a whole bit of a monologue and a bit of a mouthful, probably a headful as well. But given those themes, I thought it would be really cool if we could sort of cycle through a series of questions that explore some of those elements and some elements of those themes, and sort of get your take on some of those things, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, Adrian, we're super excited about this week. We have a lot of activation plans to show our appreciation for customer service professionals this week, and both in the UK through our teams there and in the US. We've got great set of plans, and I think you probably know we recently hired at Pega James Dodkins, the CX rock star based in the UK. And James and the team have built a great series of videos we're going to be activating this week, tying musical themes to frustrations that agents have and having a bit of fun with it. So we've had a bit of fun planning out for this week how we show appreciation in kind of a fun and interactive way. One of the things, I don't want to steal James's thunder, that we're doing is talking about those frustrations, such as agents having to repeat themselves, and James puts that to music where there's only one stanza or they just repeat the same lyrics over and over. And I'll let our viewers watch the videos online, but we're ready for this week, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Excellent. So let's start with the first theme from the Institute of Customer Service, and that's around about the changing world of work. And you sort of alluded to it today. I mean, like around, or just now, around some of the top frustrations that service agents today kind of feel. And I wanted to kind of ask you about, what should companies be doing to remove these? Well, first of all, tell us what you think some of the top frustrations are, and what should we be doing to remove these? Because these seem to be kind of somewhat persistent problems.
Yeah, they're funny. It's funny because anyone who's worked in this space knows the problems. We all know the problems. It's just solving the problem seems to be bloody difficult for a lot of companies. And the problems are really no surprise. And I don't think we're going to unveil any secrets here. We published a report, and you have my colleague Jeff Nicholson on a few months ago talking about Resolution Revolution. And that report covered a lot of those frustrations. And it's funny because the number one customer frustration is the same frustration for agents. So it's just the other side of the same coin. So customers hate the fact that they have to repeat themselves. They start something online, can't figure out what they need, can't get their answer, or can't get their query processed, trying to self-serve, wind up calling into the contact center. And the poor agent has to ask the customer to repeat themselves all over again. And they're frustrated because they've just wasted 20 minutes of time online trying to get something done for themselves. And they're not too happy. Well, the agent doesn't enjoy being in that position either. They hate having to ask the customer to repeat themselves over and over. They would love to know the context and be able to know, oh, they were on the website and they were searching for how to file a claim. I could just start the conversation off right where they left off. And that's a huge frustration. And then there are other really mundane and basic frustrations that we don't think about if you don't work in a contact center. A lot of contact centers have multiple systems that agents have to deal with and log into just to start their day. If you think about it, they sometimes have to log into 10 or 15 applications, and their screen is covered in little windows and sticky notes. And so it's a lot of systems for agents to have to swivel chair and deal with. And that's because these systems don't talk to each other and aren't connected. And so I think those are big frustrations: repetition, manual, routine work, having to go to another system and rekey in the customer's information. It's customers hate it when they give their name and then the agent asks for a bit of information or an authentication or an ID. Sign-on ID, and the customer authenticates, and then they say, can you repeat your address, or can you repeat that again, because they're in a different system that didn't take that information. So those are some of the very common frustrations that we hear from agents.
And I mean, because a lot of that kind of, as you say, it feels very kind of repetitive and quite mundane, and it feels like there's a massive opportunity to deflect some of that, or help customers help themselves and solve some of these simple things themselves. I mean, so how can companies contain some of this call volume to free up time for their agents, to allow them to focus on more complicated cases or complex cases where people having to wait in line for a long time to be heard?
Yeah, There's a whole lot of volume that comes into a contact center that is, pervasive, but it's not complex. And those are the perfect use cases to look to let customers help themselves or to use some self-service tools that can get the job done. And so a great example of that, we have a client, and I can't name names, but I'll tell you the industry, an insurer, and the top two contact reasons in the contact center are what's my claim status and how do I file a claim? Those are basic questions. And so what they've done is what they've enabled in the IVR, so the interactive voice response that most companies have as the front line to then route customers. You can have a smart IVR that recognizes who the customer is and that they have a claim open and prompt to say, would you like to know the status of your claim? And get that customer the answer they need on their way. And what I love about connecting into a smart IVR is you're using a mature channel. That's still someone who doesn't think they're quote unquote there to self-serve. They're calling in, phoning in. But you can answer them and give them the answer to those very basic questions right there in the IVR and offload, wait times, reduce wait times and offload volume that would then otherwise go to an agent.
Absolutely.
But even email. This is one that surprisingly, it's still one of the top 3 channels in the contact center. People still email in looking for answers. And the same thing can be done there. Instead of having these massive email queues that agents have to sift through and figure out where people were in the process, you can have an email bot. And for those simple use cases, the email bot can understand the agent wants to know the status of their claim. They want to update their address and do straight through processing without having to put that through to an agent.
And a lot of that is going to be, so thank you for that, Fortuné. But a lot of that is going to involves the use of, sometimes quite complex kind of technology, particularly kind of AI. And there's many people that have been talking about how the increasing use of AI in the contact center or the service sort of space is potentially going to eliminate rather the role of the agent. What's your view on that? Are we going to be speaking to bots? From now on?
Adrian, it's an excellent question. And I know that's something that, catches a lot of attention and people talk about is the job of the agent going away. And I think the short answer is no, but it is changing and will evolve in a good way. Because what I think AI and NLP and those technologies allow customer service organizations to do is not have their agents have to think about the process or entering the data, but free up and automate the process so the agent can then converse with the customer and be an advocate of the brand and empathize with the customer. Have time not to focus on the process, but to focus on the customer. So I think we're going to see better human interactions as a result of applied AI offloading some of the rote and mundane.
Awesome. Well, good to know, and I'm looking forward to that sort of emerging sort of balance between the clever use of technology to service some of the mundane and repetitive, and also then the freeing up of agents to focus on more of the kind of complex sort of stuff. Because I think it's just going to be better for everybody, better for customers, and also better for for agents. But talking about agents, I wanted to move on to the next theme, which from the ICS, which is service with respect. Now, I know that I've seen different sources report that many service agents are facing rising levels of hostility and abuse, and particularly so over the last sort of 18 months or so. Now, whilst that's sort of understandable, it's not acceptable. So what should companies be doing to help combat this and also kind of help and support their agents? Because this is going to be wearing for people that are having to, if you like, be on the front line and deal with a lot of this sort of stuff.
Yeah, Adrian, I think that's a fantastic question. And as we're all consumers, and we've all, especially during the COVID pandemic, we've all probably have our own stories of very long wait times. I know I'll tell mine very quickly and then I'll answer the question. You can book these economy flights in the US, and I'm sure it may be similar in the UK, that used to be non-refundable, but given the pandemic and the fluid nature, they would allow you to book these tickets and then change your flights if the pandemic or what have you cause you to rethink your plans. And so I booked this through a digital agency, not directly through the flight, and I knew that I could change it. So when I went to change it, you couldn't actually do it online. You had to wait for an agent. You had to wait for over an hour. And I had my phone on and I was doing other things, but it's still annoying. So you have people who are on very long hold times and are very frustrated by not being able to do what they think they should be able to do for themselves or do online quickly. And so I think there are a couple of answers here. It's not one thing. Back in the 90s, it was, popular to think about change management as people, process, and technology. And I think when you get to this one, which is a very deep issue of handling customers with empathy, there is a technology component, but then there is a people component. And I think we have to make sure that our agents are taken care of and that we're giving them the tools to do their job. We just talked about giving them better tech that allows them not to have to ask the customer to repeat themselves 10 times after they've been on hold for an hour. And also give them the tools to be able to get that customer processed and on their way without having to pass them from one department to the next. That's another thing that really frustrates customers, as we know, is you've been on for 30 minutes and then they have to pass you on to someone else. And it's even more frustrating when they pass you on and the call drops and you have to start all over. Sure. So it's a complex one, but I think if I net it out, because I know we got more to get through here on this podcast, but if I net it out, I think it's better technology to give agents context of what's going on with the customer and insight. If, for example, this is a bank and the customer is in arrears and has financial hardship, you can use the technology you have to display that to the agent so they understand they're dealing with someone in financial distress and to take a more empathetic tone and not just process them as a widget, if you will. So we could spend a lot of time on this, but that's my initial thoughts. It's not just technology; it's also the people that you need to sensitize to the situation.
No, absolutely, and providing them with the right sort of support, because because it's when you have to take a difficult call, and then maybe you follow that with another difficult call, then it's like I guess it's some more complex kind of people management sort of things. So you can't just expect that everybody's going to be able to show up consistently kind of well if it's like a series of tough calls, one after another. And so they're kind of developing that sort of support and resilience and sort of managing the kind of the demand against kind of like your workforce and things is other dimensions to that. But anyway, as you say, we've got more to get through. We don't want to go down that rabbit hole because it's a complex issue. But the thing you touched on was this idea about helping agents do their job. And I want to move on to the next thing, which is the essential customer service skills and capabilities. Because one of the things you were talking about before was like some agents are using up to like 10 to 15 different sort of apps and post-it notes and stuff all over their desktop. And that just makes an agent's job really kind of hard. And so I wanted to ask you about what do you think contact center leaders can do to improve processes such that their agents, processes that agents use to interact with customers without ripping or replacing their service desktop? Because it feels to me that, I know it's an old thing, but like, are we seeing the return of the unified desktop?
That's a good topic. I've seen the pendulum swing both ways. And it does feel like we're seeing, the major CRM vendors all talking about, kind of a unified platform. But I love this topic in the context of customer service. If we're talking about customer service, because there's this notion that if you want to transform customer service and, have a 360-degree view of the customer, you need to rip out your current desktop and replace it with a new desktop and move all your data into that new desktop. And that is a very, very risky endeavor. And I don't say that it doesn't, people don't do that and they aren't successful, but those are once in 5-10 year decisions that contact center and IT leaders make. And they don't make those decisions lightly because it is a lot of change. And we think about it a little bit differently at Pega in the sense that we're all about, let's find the one process that you're struggling with the most. What's driving the most call volume into your contact center? and let's fix that process across all your channels, not design a process that works on a self-service channel or an agent-assisted channel. But the way Pega works, without going into too much detail, is via a channelless case management architecture where you build your process once and you can activate it in all your channels.
Yeah.
And the good thing about this approach, this business architecture, it doesn't require you to change your systems of record, doesn't require you to replace your agent desktop. You literally can embed case management and process automation into your existing desktop. And that is a very unique position, I think, that we take in the market and that our clients appreciate, is they don't have to bet their badge on customer service transformation with a big T, a capital T, by ripping out all their systems.
And so I guess that's kind of what you're doing is you're almost doing a test and prove type of strategy. So like we'll try here very small, and then we kind of, if that works, then we can go on to the next one. Because I know that I spoke to Don Sherman a while ago, and he always talks about micro journeys and things, and how you align your architecture to focus on the micro journey, as you say, then deploy into whatever channel, your channel of choice or channels of choice. But it's that sort of test and prove, test and prove, test and prove, or test, prove, and expand, test, prove, and expand, I guess.
Absolutely. And we've had several clients who, tell us the desktop is not up for discussion. They don't want to replace it. I'm like, fine, you don't have to. And then they start to implement a new process and see how it works in Pega, and see, how you can run that process across all your channels. And then 2 years later, they're moving to the Pega desktop, which is an easy step to make. So we have a lot of success with this strategy, and it doesn't require you to bet the farm on a vendor and a new system.
Excellent. So let's get back to the agents and these skills and capabilities. I mean, one of the things that also I wanted to ask you about was this idea that how do leaders, contact center leaders, it's almost like normalize and raise the overall level of performance? Because sometimes it can be performance, but it can be based on kind of knowledge or experience or all sorts of different things. Performance can fluctuate. So what can leaders do to enable their agents to perform like their best agents, like in all aspects of their job?
Yeah, I love this question. And this really does touch on, when we talk about the triangle of people, process, and technology, this is where technology can really come in and shine. Because instead of having your agents trying to figure out what to do next in the process, you can have guided processes. So a good example, people often think that changing your address, at least in the US, is easy. But there are some industries, when you change your address, it changes your eligibilities. If you think about insurance, in the US, the rules are different from one state to the next. So if a customer says, I'm changing my address, I'm moving from Texas to New York, there's a lot of knock-on implications. And if an agent has to then go and sift through the New York policies and compare those policies to the Texas policies, that can take a lot of time. All that can be automated, and the system can know, oh, you're changing state. Let's compare the policy of Texas to New York, and do that work on behalf of the agents. The agent is saying, no problem. You're moving to New York. There are new rules. These are the 3 plans you can choose from. So by removing the guesswork out of what do I do next in the process and guiding the agent and just making it seamless for the agent, you're delivering that better service for the customer.
Okay, that's great. Now I want to flip it a little bit, and before we come back into the leadership thing, because we know that traditionally, historically, agent turnover and attrition, sometimes satisfaction can be kind of satisfaction can be quite low and attrition quite high and turnover quite high. I mean, what do you think leaders can do to improve satisfaction and reduce attrition? Because we know also is that it takes time for people to get up to speed, and we accumulate skills and capabilities over time. So that therefore attrition and turnover becomes a real kind of problem as it feeds to the delivery of a great experience or good customer satisfaction. So what can leaders do to help improve an agent's kind of like job satisfaction and reduce this sort of the turnover that sort of afflicts many contact centers?
Yeah, I think this question is really connected to the one we were just discussing, and is just a follow-on, actually, because agents want to do right by the customers. Everybody wants to have a sense of a job well done, and they need the right tools to get that job done. And if you give them tools that really walk them through processes and give them the context and let them know if they're dealing with a customer and financial hardship, it gives them the chance to demonstrate that empathy and understand the customer's context and their situation. So what I think from a leader's perspective is give your people the tools to get the job done, and then we're going to come on to recognition. But it's all about letting them know the work that they do is probably some of the most, if not the most meaningful work in the company, and making them understand the impact that their job has on the company in terms of customer satisfaction, customer retention, revenue growth, all of those very important business drivers.
Excellent. So continuing the leadership theme, we want to get, the leadership kind of questioning, as it were. There's the next theme I wanted to talk about was this effective strategy and focused leadership. Because we know that contact centers are almost like they're like a hidden gem in many organizations. They are really they're always on the front line. They have such a huge role to play in customer engagement and loyalty. But a lot of that can be related to their ability to do that, can be related to how empowered the agents are to do the right thing by customers. And so what can leaders do to empower their agents to boost customer loyalty and do it at scale? Because this is a really important thing for big organizations that are dealing with kind of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of customers.
Yeah, a couple of prongs that I'll touch on here. And one of the principles, and I don't want to give away something else I wanted to talk about later, but I'm a big reader of military strategy, and from a different angle, not to think about wars, but how you can apply some of that. And this notion of decentralized command, and in other places, people might talk about the commander's intent. That really means that your people understand what are your strategic objectives, what is the mission. And so by giving contact center people that vision of we need to do right by our customers, having them understand the commander's intent, and if there are processes that aren't optimal and hoops they have to jump through, still doing the right thing by the customer. But that is still, if you will, kind of more on the art side. I think on the science side, at least from Pega, we've been able to use decisioning to, at the moment where customers are unhappy and thinking of dropping their plan. If you think about telecommunications carrier, common scenario, people are upset with their bill. They feel like they've spent too much. There's an issue. They're ready to quit their service. And by using decisioning with a sister product, a customer service, a customer decision hub, one-to-one engagement, we're able to understand, using a lot of data input in real time, what is the next best action to take in terms of, is this customer at risk for leaving? What incentive or offer can we perhaps offer them to keep them and to stay? And that is, it has a real-time feedback loop, whether the offer is taken or not. And so it gets better and better. So connecting decisioning with customer service in the context of loyalty and in the context of upsell, and if it's appropriate, if you don't have a frustrated customer, can be an important driver of customer retention and revenue growth.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And so the final theme I wanted to come to was give your customer service heroes the recognition they deserve. I mean, given everything that we've gone through over the last year and a half or so, and the importance of customer-facing staff, I mean, what should companies be doing to, not just now, but continue to, as we go forward, to recognize the individuals and teams that have gone above and beyond?
Yeah, it's a great question, and this is one that I will lean towards the people angle of that people, process, and technology triangle. And if you would allow me, Adrian, it is very short. There's a small passage from a book, Leadership. It's Leadership Strategy and Tactics by Jocko Willink, and he talks about how you get your people motivated and aligned to be self-disciplined and to work. And so I'll just read it very quickly because he says it better than I can. You are the most important member of the platoon, I told the point man. You are the one who leads us on patrol. You know where we are going. You guide us through all the hazards and are the eyes and ears of the platoon when it comes to sensing danger like ambush or improvised explosive devices. And it was the truth. We all counted on the point man. I had a similar conversation with the radio man. You are the most important member of the platoon. If we run into a large enemy force and we come under threat of being overrun, it is the radio on your back and your ability to use it that is going to save us. Your ability to call for fire, to contact aircraft or tanks or other friendly forces to come and save us is what will keep us alive in this desperate situation. It will all depend on you. This was also a true statement, but it was also true for the medic. I told him just that. You know, there's nothing more important than bringing our guys back alive. And if someone gets wounded, it will be you and only you who keeps him alive until we get him to a surgical facility. You are the most important person in the platoon. The list goes on. I told the machine gunners that they were the most important without putting down suppressive fire during a gunfight. Our platoon would not be able to maneuver and survive. The rear security man was the most important because, like the point man, he knew we were going and the direction to take us if we got in a gunfight. And of course, the enlisted and officer leadership heard the same thing from me. They were the most important individuals on the team because leadership is the most important thing on the battlefield. So in the end, I would tell each and every member of the squad or platoon or task unit that they were the most important person in the platoon, and I was never lying. So that obviously comes from a military point of view, but I think is super important in a company. And I think that our contact center frontline workers need to hear that message. The job they're doing is the most important job in the company. It will keep the customers. It will retain loyalty. It will improve satisfaction. And so that's what I believe leadership's job is to do, is to make people understand the importance of their work and to recognize their work.
Awesome. I love that story. I mean, it's, it's very lateral, but very, 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 very relevant. So that's all the themes for the National Customer Service Week that we cycled through. I mean, I wanted to ask Fortuné, is there anything else that you'd like to add or highlight that we've missed out that sort of fits in this whole celebration of customer service heroes, let's say?
Yeah, I think for this week, what we're doing, and I would love for others to do, is to just reflect on the role customer service plays in business or your organization, and to celebrate it. And like I mentioned at the top of the podcast, we're going to have a lot of fun celebrating it, and in many ways, James is going to be producing some videos, but we're going to share our own personal experiences. How customer service has impacted our lives. So I think that would be something I would just reflect on and ask the readers to reflect on, is think about the work that is being done in customer service, and let's show our appreciation for that this week.
Awesome. That's a great point. But also, Fortuné, before I can ask you some questions that I always append to these podcasts, I wanted to, we know we've talked about a number of different things. We talked about 5 different sort of like themes, and explored all sorts of different sort of things. But sometimes, and that can sometimes feel a lot if you're, say, in a contact center, you're leading a contact center team. So for somebody listening into this or reading the highlights and they want to improve their service and experience they deliver to customers, how would you boil it all down? What would your best advice be in terms of what should they do first?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, simplify your service. Whether you know it or not, you've got a lot of processes and they're complex, and agents are under a lot of strain. And the more simple you can make your processes, I'm not saying to remove service levels, but to simplify what you're doing, I think is where I would recommend to put your focus.
Great advice. So that brings me to the end couple of questions that I add in at the end of, I've been adding them into this podcast for the last sort of couple of years or so now. And I've been doing some ongoing word association collection. I call it longitudinal social research. Sounds quite fancy. I'm not sure if that actually really works, but it's all since I published my latest book, Punk CX, back in 2019. And since then, I've been asking every interviewee on the podcast two things. The first thing I asked them is, what one or two words do you think would describe a more punk approach to customer experience?
Yes. I'm going to also steal from one of my favorite authors, Jocko Willink, who I was quoting from earlier to answer this. And it's one word, and hopefully you don't have it on your list, and that's good. And if you want to hear the story, I'm not going to recount the story, but just go into Google and type Jocko, Jocko, good, and you'll hear his video. But this word, I think, typifies Punk CX approach, because what good is, it's the mindset that you need to have when things are going bad, when you're not getting the budget that you want to buy the new application, you're not getting the cooperation of the other departments you need to implement it. Good. The answer is good. You know why? Because then you can think about, okay, how am I going to get over this wall? I'm still alive. I have other options. It forces you to continue to think and evolve and improve. So my one word for this would be good.
And I'm happy to say, and surprised to say, that it's not on my list. So welcome to the list, Fortuné.
Excellent.
Brilliant. And so the second follow-up question to that is, so what sort of company or brand do you think epitomizes that sort of punk CX ethos?
Yeah, it's a consultancy, a business management consultancy. Echelon Front is the name of the consultancy, and they teach all about extreme ownership. And this is that notion that you own it, even if you don't own it, you do take ownership of it. And unsurprisingly, the same author that I've been talking about wrote that book along with Laith Babin, former Navy SEAL, but it applies to the business world, and that's what they do is business leadership consulting. And so I would say Echelon Front and extreme ownership epitomize that ethos. Own it, make it work.
That's perfect. I love that. And one I haven't heard about before, and it will give us something to kind of go and look at and research, which is awesome. So, Fortuné, thank you for that. I mean, that's all I have for today. I mean, so I wanted to say thank you for sharing your time and your insight and your expertise with us today. That's been awesome. And also just wanted to say a big shout out to everybody who works in a customer service team that is kind of fielding queries for customers and trying to help. You are heroes. I tip my cap to you. You are the heroes of this week.
Likewise, Adrian, thank you for having me on the podcast. I enjoyed it very much. And thanks for everyone listening. And I hope to speak to you again soon.
Take care. Well, that was cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I always do actually, because I always learn something new when I speak to some of these amazing kind of people. And it's always something new that I can incorporate into my writing, speaking, workshops, and other sort of advisory work that I do. Now, if you're interested in learning about any of that sort of stuff, then you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do tune in again soon. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.